So hello. This one that we're going to do today on the sea monsters. It's a funny one. I feel like it's been coming a long time. The sea monster energy has been kind of there, and came up when I read the book of Circe, and then I reread the book, and it really came through again. And so I'm taking the leap into it. I can't imagine this is going to be the most popular ever of the goddesses that I've chosen, because who wants to look at their inner sea monster? But I kind of feel like where's Scylla? So we're going to be looking at two today, but Scylla is the one that drew me to. There's this idea in esoteric teachings that you meet a kind of threshold of your shadow. And for me, that threshold, there's a lot of anger there. There's a lot of suspicion and mistrust. And it's a place where I don't want to mend things. Like I mostly I'm someone who wants to mend things when they're not okay, but this is a place where I'm like, I don't really want to mend it. And there's this kind of part of me, I just felt it there, that is kind of, this is my totality. This is the part that's really has been repressed in me. And so I'm kind of going to skirt even around that today, because this is, something that people will see out there, and I'm not entirely comfortable talking about the detail of the shadow. But I want to approach Scylla and kind of honor her, honor the place in myself, honor the place that exists within the feminine. I think I kind of see as well collectively as the dark feminine, the shadow of jealousy, of wreaking havoc, of causing destruction. Often we think of these things as coming from the masculine or from the patriarchy, but women are just as capable of creating those. And if we don't honor the force, I think it can manifest as like very deep depression or suicidal behavior or addiction. It can come out sideways. So this is my embracing of a totality with these goddesses we're going to look at today. So I'm going to do a presentation as usual, tell a bit of the story, and then you can say what resonates for you, and what you think of what I'm saying. So, okay, so I'm going to share my presentation first of all, but where has it gone? Hold on a sec. I'm so glad you're all here. I almost thought like no one will come to this, but you're all here. So yeah, that's really cool. Okay. Hang on, present. There we go, present. Okay, let me go back to the beginning. Okay, so these two characters are called Scylla, number 155 as an asteroid, and Charybdis, number 388 as an asteroid. So if you want to, I did put this in a message earlier in Soul Tribe. You can go on astro.com, and on the extended section, you can put these in and find out where they are in your own chart. And actually, up until the other day, I was only going to do Scylla, and then I found out that Charybdis kind of really works with Scylla, and so I decided to do them both together. I'm going to come back to this image. So this is John Waterhouse's image of Circe transforming Scylla, who was a sea nymph, into a monster. But I'll come back to the image in a minute. So I found this image of Scylla and Charybdis. So the Straits of Messina lie between Italy and Sicily, and there's a very narrow strip of sea. And there's some kind of phenomenon there where the tides have a huge pull backwards and forwards. And there's a legend from the time of Odysseus and, going back thousands of years of these two monsters at each side of the strait. So you can see here a boat coming through, and sailors avoided this strait whenever they could, but there were times that they couldn't avoid it and they had to come through. So on the one side, you have Scylla, who is this six-headed monster. Sometimes those heads are seen as dog heads, and there's a barking sound that goes with this monster, and she comes up, although she comes down, actually, she comes down from a cliff, and but her tail is in the undersea in a cave, and so she will kill 6 sailors at a time, like grabbing them and eating them. So the legend with Scylla is if she gets you, there's 6 of you gone, like boom, straight away. Now, on the other side, you've got Charybdis, who is also a monster, who's said to suck in the sea and then spit it out. So this is obviously some kind of reference to the tides, but the sea comes in and then it's spat out again. And so sailors had this terrible dilemma, because this creates a whirlpool, okay, when the water's sucked in. And so sailors could either go towards the whirlpool and risk being sucked in, or if they avoided the whirlpool, then Scylla was likely to get them. So you have the situation of 2 terrible monsters on either side. So as I've been feeling this situation in myself, it feels like something that's very hard to do something about. Like psychically, you might feel like frozen, like doing this is going to be, I don't want to do that, but I also don't want to do that. And there's a sense of being kind of stuck in the middle. I'm not sure who the artist is, but I've put the reference from where I got this photo from. Okay, so let me tell a bit of the story. Let me go back to this image, actually. So I mentioned before, and in our last one, we did Circe, and you might remember this bit of the story where the first man that Circe falls in love with is this fisherman called Glaucus. And Glaucus arrives on her shore and she builds up this relationship with him. But she knows that she will never be able to marry him because he's immortal. And so she is learning about her powers. There's something quite fascinating about this. So she finds out from one of her uncles, now her father is Helios, who is the old Titan god, and the Olympians destroyed the Titans, okay? So where the Titans fell, the blood fell on this island. And now this is a power place, and there's special plants that grow there. And Circe takes Glaucus there, and while he's sleeping, she makes him immortal through plant medicine, and the actual place is the power place. So she's the first kind of white witch in a way, Circe, although she's not using white magic here. She's I would say she's using black magic because she hasn't asked him and she hasn't fully considered the consequences of what's going to come next. She wants to marry him, and she doesn't actually tell him that she's done it. She says, the fates have made you immortal. And so they set off to Helios's palace. He can now come with, and and there's the situation where suddenly there's all these sea nymphs. Before Glaucus is just with Circe, and Glaucus takes a fancy to Scylla, who is a beautiful sea nymph, but she's very vain. And Circe and her have this confrontation where, so Glaucus's skin goes blue when he becomes immortal. And Scylla says to Circe, well, I'm going to take your man, but I don't really care about him, his silly blue skin. So she's vain, she's disrespectful, and she makes Circe really angry. And if we consider, like, Circe's been rejected her whole life by every single person in her life, all these males and her mother, her aunts, everyone, her siblings, you can imagine that fear that this man that she loves is now going to be taken away from her. And under this immense pressure, she uses her plant power and dark magic to turn Scylla into a sea monster. Another part of the story, I like tuning into these kind of subtle parts of the story, is that just gonna, oh, you can't see the image. Okay. I'll try again. So sorry about that. Okay, so that's the image I was talking about with the boat coming through. And this is the image here of Circe making her spell and pouring it. She pours it into where Scylla swims. That's how she creates it. Okay, so sorry about that. I only just saw the chat. So yeah, there's this lovely nuance in the story where Circe turns Scylla into monster, and she says, what I want is Scylla's inner monster to be seen by everyone. And what comes out is this hideous sea monster with like 6 heads and these tails. And but Circe really has to face the karma of the situation. She's created this monster who kills hundreds and hundreds of sailors. And finally, her and Telemachus, who's her alchemical consort, actually, the first thing they do when they come together, they choose to come together, is they go and kill Scylla, and they have to use magic to kill her as well. So this is a really deep kind of, there's elements here, like Circe's jealousy creates Scylla as a sea monster. And so there's kind of woven into this historical negative energy between women, and this is something I've been experiencing, this kind of fear of someone kind of coming in and taking your partner, which actually happened in my marriage. So I've kind of got that resonant fear in the background. And it's something I've done to other women when I was young, which I really regret now. So I'm facing my karma, having been this kind of Scylla character as well. So Scylla and So yeah, some of the feelings you might have is like the feeling of being provoked, something way out of proportion maybe to what it actually is, jealous, chewed up and spat out by someone you may wish to, and any of these you may wish to look at these archetypes in yourself. Yeah, and it reminded me a bit of the Dolly Parton song, Jolene, Please Don't Take My Man. So there's that kind of energy inherent in all of this. And how, if we fear that someone might do that, how that changes our behavior, our kind of feeling of safety or of wanting to interact with that person if you feel that kind of threat going on. Okay, so I read up on another astrologer who'd written quite a nice piece about this. She was coming in from this different angle of the two monsters on each side of the straits, and she used the word stuck between a rock and a hard place, which is about having few choices, forced to confront a deep shadowy part of yourself. Dogs often have a dark goddess connection. And so both of these monsters bark, and the barking confuses the sailors and distracts them. And then one or the other of the sea monsters get them. But we find dogs with like Hecate as well, and the black dog, Charybdis, who guards the entrance to the underworld, which you might have seen in Harry Potter. There's a version of that. This thing about Charybdis eating you up and spitting you out. Well, I really had this experience with this person, but I hadn't put those words to it. And it was like feeling like I'd been used. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, feeling like, I want to take what I want now. I want experience, I want knowledge, and then I'm going to spit you out again. And by the way, this person is someone in my 3D reality. So it's no one ever who's seen my astrology online. And it's not someone I even know very well. So, yeah. But this is how I could sort of see it. Like, Charybdis may come across as having this insatiable appetite for knowledge or experience, but it's quite superficial. And you can find this a lot. And I was certainly like this in my, even like 10 years ago in my spiritual seeking. I'd go from one course to another course, and in a way, I was taking from those spiritual teachers and then spitting them out. And then I'm going to try this and spit that out. And so there's this kind of feeling of using spiritual seeking as a way of not dealing with your shadow self. And one of the things I love about the Gene Keys is the contemplation always turns you back into yourself, and what's the feeling for you. Doesn't matter what the other person's generated. The other person's just triggered this in me, but she's made me aware that I have this deep kind of Scylla Charybdis element going on inside myself, which I wasn't aware of really before. And I guess you find out when you're ready for that. Okay, so I went and looked at the discovery chart of Scylla, actually. I think I've written it down. It's November 1895, so she's been around for a long time in our consciousness. Like the discovery date is when she kind of becomes more of our human consciousness, more awareness anyway in our human consciousness. So the astrology is really fascinating of this discovery chart. So you can probably see all these red lines here. And so this is called a fixed cross because there's 4 planetary bodies, and they're all in fixed signs of the zodiac, which are Taurus, Aquarius, Scorpio, and Leo. So as the name suggests, fixed, these are the signs that least like to change. Okay, so they have a kind of rock-like quality, especially Taurus, and then you go through the elements, but there's a stubbornness and unwillingness to change. And if we thought of that energy of a rock and a hard place, then this is what you get with, this is called a cross, a fixed cross. And any individual who has this in their chart is going to face this real inner tension, like through their whole lives. It's probably one of the most uncomfortable things you can have in your birth chart, actually, a fixed cross. And this is when Scylla is born into our human consciousness. And it gets more fascinating. So Scylla herself is in Jinki 2, conjunct Pluto. So Jinki 2 is the pure yin hexagram. And Pluto is the planet of life, death, rebirth. And it also opens up the energies of the trans-Neptunian objects. So Pluto really is a doorway into unitary consciousness. If we can't get through Pluto, we're not going to get to the unitary consciousness beyond. And so here we have Scylla and Pluto. So she's like saying, you want to work with me, you're going to have to go into the depths. You're going to have to go through a real life, death, rebirth situation to see me, basically. So here she is in, this is one point of this in Taurus. And it's Jinki 2. Okay, so on an absolute exact square, which is 90-degree angle, we have Charybdis, and Charybdis is conjunct Saturn, another really tricky planet to work with, because Saturn is all about constrictions and facing obstacles. And this is Jinki 13, line 6. So this is all about deep listening. And I think it's the shadow of discord, the 13, moving to empathy. So you've got these 2 planets at 90-degree angle, which a square is, again, it's this rock and hard place. These are pushing, challenging each other all the time. You know, this relentless kind of energy. Now, opposite here, opposite Scylla, we have the sun is at 16 degrees Scorpio that day, and actually conjunct Jupiter, which is expansive. And the sun is all about ourself, our creativity, our spark of light. And so the point of this challenge is to awaken this expansive self. It's like, wow, it's so perfect. You couldn't make up a bit of birth chart for this. And the sun is in Jinki 1, which is pure yang. Now, what's interesting so far is these 3 Jinkis are 3 parts of what's called the human design vessel of love, the cross of the vessel of love. But there is the 4th point, which isn't in the cross, but is actually Uranus, is there 19 degrees Leo. So it's just slightly out of the cross. And Uranus is in Jinki 4, which is all about forgiveness. And so, forgiving, here it feels like Uranus, the liberator, is saying the key to liberation is forgiveness. But maybe it's also boundaries, because if there's people around you who you feel are kind of taking from you and then spitting you out, so they're not really honoring what you're giving them, really, then maybe there needs to also be some boundary around, stopping that whirlpool, like sucking you in and pushing you out again. Yeah, so that's kind of one of the ways I'm dealing with that is like the boundary issue, and yeah, not allowing people to do that to us, because it's not honoring what we have to give. If someone is treating it in that kind of superficial way, and sometimes it doesn't matter. I mean, I kind of come across it actually all the time, and it doesn't really affect me. But on this occasion, it did affect me. So that was interesting. This person kind of got under my radar a bit, and wasn't expecting that reaction. But it can be, I think this thing with Scylla and Charybdis, it can be really out of proportion to what has kind of actually happened in real life. And whenever that happens, actually, it's a good idea to look at your shadow self, because it's going to be all about that. So, yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to pause now and just pause the recording and just see if anyone would like to, if you want to ask any questions as well. But if you want to kind of talk about any of that resonating with you, some of you may have looked up where your Scylla and Charybdis is. So I found out Charybdis is actually squaring my sun, so it's in this thing, and Scylla is quite close to my moon, so I have them quite prominent in my chart. So it's interesting that they have been calling me. Okay, I'm going to pause now.